What's up, guys? Welcome back. You got Trevor on the Nichols Performance channel, and we're diving back into the 5.7 build here for the S10 V8 swap video. So if you watched the last video, you know we ran into all kinds of problems and all kinds of things had to change. So we're going to get into how all that went together and everything, the way it got figured out, and how we got to the point so far to where this thing's actually looking pretty sexy. So stick around. Alright guys, so as you can see, we have our bottom end. It is done, it's put together, it's staying together. We got our heads on, we have valve train. It's all done, like it's final done. I mean, we are really to the point to where like this sucker is like, she's right there, like just gotta button it up basically at this point. We left off talking about how we had to change to these AFR heads because our Vortecs were cracked and I didn't want to do all the work that was involved with that. These were modestly priced, they're better, lighter. They look pretty good sitting there actually. We did change the flat top pistons. Now I did go to Summit Racing's, their line of flat top pistons. It had a pretty attractive price and seemed to have good reviews. Mine of which is not so much. So I had some issues with those. Just to get off the rip here, I'll throw up some pictures, but we had some defects in those. One had a weird like just booger that was like casted into it, and it was unusable because of that. And I had some other weird issues, like I had one that was sitting like slightly at an angle, like the valve reliefs weren't lined up like horizontal. I ended up using that because I didn't notice it till after it. There's also one I couldn't really take a picture of where like one side of the piston was like rocked up a little higher than the other. Like it was in the length of the pin though, so it's not like it was just rocking on the pin. Just weird little quality issues. They looked cool. They said Summit's logo on them. They had the like anti-scuff coating. If you're gonna get those, I would get 2 boxes and return the ones you don't use. That's the best way to get away if you want to get the cheap stuff and be able to make it. That's what you need to do. So moving on from that though, so those are in there. We moved them all around. We got our weight balance of our rods and pistons. So I went to ARP head bolts, which is probably a good thing with all this new stuff. I was trying to be cheap and use the stock ones. But you have to use washers if you go use aluminum heads. They are sealed because they all go into the water jackets. But these are 1.6 ratio rockers. Also, I did leak check all the valves. I did just a tiny bit of cleanup work in the chambers, but nothing crazy. Just like little sharp edges and stuff. I was able to keep my stock push rods. They were the perfect length. I was kind of surprised by that actually. I didn't even have to bust out the like length checker tool, so that was cool. Anything to save money at this point. But we're ready to rock. So now we get into what I'm gonna call like exterior stuff here. So check this out. Here is our covers and pulley painted up and cleaned up. That's because boom, stock covers will fit no problem. That's awesome, because stock covers, or not stock covers, but aftermarket covers for whatever reason seem to be stupidly expensive. Now I did have to do a little bit of modification. Basically just cut out the like lower part of the support arms there, and I kind of like squeezed that little baffle thing together just for a little extra room. But just cutting that little bottom part out fits on just fine. Okay, pretty excited about those. Moving on. Now it's about time to get into the intake. So that's actually what I'm working on currently here. I've got it all cleaned up as I can get it, and it looks pretty good. If you guys remember from like the very first video where we tore this apart, there was just an ungodly amount of just carbon in here. It was horrible. It looks so much better now. I know you can still see a little bit of black, but that is like totally acceptable compared to what we started with. Which, by the way, any of you guys that's watching, if you've dealt with this and you know something that will clean carbon away easily, please share it with us in the comments. I just like soaked this with like a bunch of different degreasers and brake cleaner and everything, and pressure washer, and just over and over and over and over, and that's how I got it to this point. I did a little bit of port cleanup. Not really like a gasket match. I don't really believe in the whole gasket match thing. It's kind of like an old person like folklore. But I did lay the gasket over. I compared it to how it laid on these. These are pretty nice and squared up where they're supposed to be. Of course, just like all this factory parts, there's like huge quality variance from like one spot to another. Some were okay, some were like way off. You can still see the Sharpie marks of like where I trace this out where it's like supposed to be. It's better than what it was. That's all I was trying to do here. Some of these I had to take a lot of material off, like they were skewed like this or that, or off to one side. This intake, I'm sure you guys are going to give, anyone that knows anything is probably going to give me grief about using this because it's a turd. We are upgrading to the better injection system though. I have it in a box somewhere where it's not the poppets, you actually have individual injectors. It's just an upgrade. It's still like the factory plug and play. But so that intake is pretty much the reason that we chose this engine for this swap. Now, you could throw a simple carbureted intake on there. There's like an old school Camaro or something, and you probably gain like 20 horsepower right there. This intake, it kind of sucks. But that's what's going to make this work for us, because it's the same kind of injection that the S10 uses. And so this is the golden ticket right here. Of when we get our computer reflashed, we add extra wires for the 2 more injectors, because from 6 to 8, and this will all be controlled the way that the V6 is controlled now, basically, when it gets reflashed. And that's why we have to stick with this. This is what's going to keep all our gauges working and the transmission happy, and so we don't have to like totally go to a whole standalone setup. This is what's going to make it simple. Okay, I hope I somewhat covered that to where you guys understand. So, moving on from that now. Okay guys, so I still got some work to do. The cool thing is that our pile of parts is getting a lot smaller. Like I said, we're almost there. I threw both those covers on just to give you a quick look at where we're at right now. I think it really does look pretty good. So, alright, I got some more work to do. Get this buttoned up some more, and then I'll catch up with you. Okay guys, update. We are here. This thing is all put together. We got the intakes on, valve covers on, headers are on, ignition, the whole 9. It's all put together here. So let's go through this real quick, because there's a little bit you got to catch up on here. Like I said, intakes on. So lower and uppers on now. This is port matched. We already talked about it's got better injection and all that stuff. but I'll throw some pictures up, some before and after. We had some misalignments going on, and I did the best I could. I was actually able to take pictures inside there so I could do some comparisons, grind off what didn't need to be there, and I actually got it looking pretty good, cleaned some more carbon out of it, and there's only like one port that has just a slight mismatch. The rest of them are looking like A-okay. So made the best of this thing as we could. That's really cool. You might notice we have new covers. So I was talking about trying to make the stock ones fit, and it's kind of complicated because these heads are actually made for two different, the old school and the new school covers basically. The old ones that had the perimeter bolts, and those bosses where it would screw down actually hit the like ceiling like flange on these newer type covers, and so I actually had to cut out parts of the cover to make this fit. Once I cut the old one, you know, and it dropped down more, I realized it was actually hitting in there. So I had to go to these. They're a 1/4 inch taller. They look pretty good. They got the logo on there. The headers, pretty obvious thing. I actually got another video clip. I went through a lot of pain with these, so let's cut to that. Okay guys, let's talk about the headers I got for this project. Sorry all the fan noise and stuff. I'm gonna get into why I have the fans running right now. So these are Headman headers. They are made just for this swap, for putting a small block into an S10. So they have most of the like unique fitment things figured out. Mostly, I say that. Unfortunately, there's only like 2 of these that are made, and they're both made by this Headman brand. This is the smaller of the 2. This is 1.5 inch tubes, and the other one's 1 3/4 inch. Now, for any real power, you would want the bigger one, or there's actually a size in between. 1 5/8 would be ideal for most things. For some reason, they don't offer that size. It's either the small or the really big. I found there's actually there's a calculator for header size. Summit has one. There's one on some other websites, but you put in a few numbers, like what RPM your torque peak's going to be at, and the displacement of the engine, how many cylinders, that type of thing, and it will give you a rough estimate of how big of primaries you should have, you know, on a, you know, textbook ideal way. So with our engine being more of a lower grunt truck build, it actually worked out that these are going to be just big enough, which is cool, because the bigger ones, turns out they had all kinds of fitment issues. Basically all the reviews on the bigger one just said that it basically hit everything, and the flanges were different, whereas these have the like ball and socket kind of deal, so it can move and flex. The other one was just like a straight bolt-on deal with like a turn down pipe. Like they wasn't even expecting you to hook it up to an exhaust at all. I don't know what the deal was there. It's a little unfortunate though, because these are round tubes, well, round port, and our heads are square port. Take you over here. So our heads are, you know, squares. These are circles. Obviously that's not going to line up perfectly. Now the other headers, the 1 3/4, they were squares. But like I said, they had all those fitment issues, and I did not want to mess with that. I got enough other things I've got to worry about. So yeah, not an ideal fit at all. This gasket's a little bit bigger than what the ports on the head is, so it won't be quite this bad. Whatever. I did clean it up, and I kind of chamfered the edges of all of these. These are actually pretty rough. There's a lot of like weld berries and just unfinished surfaces on these. Beveled these holes out to help minimize that issue as best I could. I couldn't get too crazy because these are actually welded on the inside instead of the outside, which I don't think I've seen that done before. Okay, speaking of cleanup, now let me show you why I have fans running. Look at this mess that I have to deal with right here. So these have this black paint on here, but they specifically tell you that it's not high heat paint, it's a protective coating. And I'm really aggravated by this because they basically just spray painted them with cheap junk paint so they wouldn't rust. Now I have to strip all of this paint off so I can paint them with actual high heat paint, or else this is just going to burn off and they're going to rust and they're not going to last. Over here with acetone, it's basically what this is just acetone. I mean, what's wrong with just coating bare metal parts with oil like everyone else does? I don't know. So that's the update on the headers. If you have a two-wheel drive, I think there were some more options. I'm apparently the odd man out trying to do this with the four-wheel drive because there's a lot less things available for that apparently. So yeah, it ended up being a little bit more complicated than that. I had to resort to other methods because I was getting impatient with trying to rub it off and it just was kind of turning into a goopy mess. So I threw one into my little barbecue grill and seeing if I could just bake it off that way. I used a propane torch and fired through the pipes, kind of like simulated the engine running. And that actually did burn quite a bit off. And then paint them with some actual high heat paint. I don't know why they couldn't just do this in the first place. All right, so now since I got through all that trauma, they're on there. They're fitting pretty good. The battle's not over yet because we have some really tight fitments in here. I guess I'm glad I got the smaller ones, even though the bigger ones would probably be a little better. But I'll show you, everything is just really close in here. I'm gonna have to wrap these and put heat protection on all the spark plugs. And then on it'd be the passenger side, there's some really close fitment with the spark plugs. I actually had to get a special tool to actually be able to change the spark plugs. I mean, it's a tight fit. So yeah, I acquired a new tool set, but it wasn't too bad. So an excuse to get new tools is really never a bad thing. So we got all of that. You can see the wires, Summit wires, Summit distributor. These are some of the good things Summit makes. I have nothing bad to say. I actually have the V6 version of this on the 4.3 right now, and I've had zero issues. I did paint match the cover just to make it look good because it was blue and it didn't match anything. So that matches the block. So while I was at it here, I ran around to a bunch of different parts stores and I sourced all new sensors. Pretty much all the ones that were like hard to get to. I got a new oil pressure one back here, temp sensor up here for the computer. This temp sensor, this is actually for the gauge. You have two different ones. I had to figure that out, why there's two temp sensors. This is for the gauge. That, I guess, is just for the computer. You can't see it down there, crank position sensor and a knock sensor over on the other side. Pretty much the only one I didn't change is like this map sensor up here. I don't think these things really go bad, and if it does, it's right up here where I can get to it. And then the distributor had a new like timing sensor that came inside of it. So we're pretty much like set up for reliability. I don't want one of these to go wrong, like, you know, a month after we get this thing rolling and I can't get to it. That would just, we're avoiding that situation. And then for the stuff that you don't see, like we don't have a throttle body, there's some little miscellaneous stuff. Obviously there's no front end stuff here. That's all going to be robbed from the 4.3 because all that stuff's interchangeable. So like water pump, alternator, all that stuff comes off that motor, goes right on here, no issues at all. Hopefully this valve cover, the AC sits right here. This only being a 1/4 inch taller, hopefully that clears over there. It should be fine. We'll find out. And then just whatever miscellaneous stuff. This is where it's going to get weird. We're kind of Frankenstein different things like throttle brackets and stuff like that. Pretty much the next time you guys see this is when we have a transmission hanging off of it, and hopefully we're just putting it in the truck. So there's really nothing left to do here. So she's sitting good. I've triple checked all my work. I think we're good. So fingers crossed. Okay guys, I think that's about all I got left on here. So if you've made it this far in the video, it might be time to consider subscribing. Throw a like on that video for me. You can get notified when I get new videos out. It's all right down there. Or in a minute there'll be a couple videos and a subscribe button right on there. So it helps me out. It helps you guys keep track of when I do more cool stuff like this. Not to mention the videos I've already done. So check out the channel. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.